Welcome back, children, to social science class. Today we will continue with the fourth part of lesson number 9, the freedom movement of 1857. Now, children, let's understand why the revolt was a failure. The revolt began but soon failed to gain momentum. That is, it slowed down. It was mainly confined to Uttar Pradesh, Delhi and West Bengal. That was one of the reasons. Sikh soldiers of Punjab area remained loyal to the British throughout. But the most significant reason was the lack of common program and a plan of action. Moreover, the people who led the revolt lacked resources and a well-planned organization. So, this is a brief introduction of the reasons. Now, let's understand in detail again. We can divide it into three major reasons: administrative failure, military failure and lack of unity. Okay. So, administrative failure, there was no planning before this revolt. Everyone was fighting without any leadership. People in different regions fought for themselves, for their own territories and for their own kingdoms. Bahadur Shah Zafar was the leader without powers. Moreover, he was also a very weak ruler. Revolt was directionless, without a strong leader. As it lacked a strong and powerful leader who would lead them to the correct path of success, here the revolt was not led by any such strong leader. Now, let us understand military failures. The British Army was superior in every sense. British Army had unlimited supplies of ammunitions. They had good weapons. So, there was not a leader figure from Indian side. The sepoys too were not organized. Now, lack of unity. Rajputana did not participate in this revolt and accepted subsidiary alliance. The revolt was mostly North India centric. That is, the revolt was spread to major parts of North India. In North India also everyone was fighting for their own causes. It was not a united fight. No sense of nationalism or nationality was there. Now, let us understand each one in detail. Limited scope of the revolt. The entire country did not participate in the revolt. The revolt was limited to Delhi, Meerut, Awadh, Bihar, Rohilkhand and some neighboring territories. Punjab, Gujarat and Rajasthan and Assam along with Orissa remained untouched by the revolt. There was lack of support also. The revolt did not get support from all sections of the society. The intellectual class did not participate or sympathize with the rebels. Intellectual class means the learned class, the Brahmins and other classes who did not have any sympathy for the revolters and they did not participate in the revolt. Moreover, the Sindhyas, the Nizam of Hyderabad and rulers of Patiala in Punjab remained loyal to the British for their own personal motives. Many zamindars and moneylenders chose to stay away from the revolt altogether. That is, they did not take any interest in supporting the rebellions. There was no unity among the rebels. The ideas of nationalism and unity had not yet developed. There was no common purpose among the rebels. That is, the rebellions did not have any common purpose. They just went on revolting against the British rule. Next is weak leadership. The revolters had great leaders like Tatia Tope, Nana Saheb and Lakshmi Bai. but they could be successful only in certain regions of the country. They were brave but lacked foresight and knowledge of military strategy. They did not have a well planned program to fight against the Britishers. Tatia Tope and Rani Lakshmibai failed to defend the Jhansi fort because they did not have the military skill to stop the advancing British forces. Also, Bahadur Shah Zafar, who was chosen as the leader of the revolt, was very old and weak. He was not at all capable of leading a revolt of such failure. Next is superior military strength of the British. The British had unlimited resources and sufficient finance to fund their army during the revolt. The Indian sepoys used primitive weapons such as old guns, knives and swords to fight, while the British used superior military equipment. Mere participation or heroism could not match the latest weapons of the British. The sepoys who joined the civilians could not face the well organized and well disciplined army of the British. So that was one of the most important cause also of the failure of the revolt. Next is modernization by the British. We have seen earlier how Lord Dalhousie introduced reforms for the benefit of British administration. Moreover, reforms were even introduced in education and other fields. The availability of railways and introduction of telegraph also enabled them to communicate faster and dispatch men as well as military equipment at the appropriate time. It was for the expansion of British rule in India that the British had introduced modern methods and reformations in different areas, so that like for example railways, they started the first railway between Mumbai and Thane, and that main reason was that they wanted to transport weapons and other goods for requirement of the military purpose as early as possible. Moreover, they also wanted to communicate on the other side of the country among the British officers. So they introduced the telegraph system and newspapers because printing had already started. There was lack of common ideals also among the revolutionaries. The Hindus wanted to set up their rule, while the Muslims wanted to revive the Mughal rule. So both the communities only looked upon their own purpose, and so the revolt was confined to their own regions. They did not work collectively to fight against the British. Next is secret negotiations with the British. Most of the old rulers who fought in the revolt had been deprived of their territories. That is, their territories were taken over by the British. During the revolt, some of them started negotiation with the British for restoration of their rights and betrayed the rebels. So that means that some rulers, they did not help the rebellions because they wanted their territories to be safeguarded, and so they supported the British. They did not help the rebellions. Support by the Sikhs and Gurkhas was also equally there, responsible for the failure of the revolt. The Sikhs and the Gurkhas fought by the side of the British, which proved to be a major disadvantage for the rebels. They sometimes even supplied secret plans and helped the British to achieve success. The last one reason is the lack of feeling of nationalism. All the leaders were fighting for regaining their power or territories lost to the British. They were not fighting for the freedom of their nation. They were all fighting for the individual territories. For example, we know Rani Lakshmi Bai. She fought, but she fought for her own kingdom. In the same way, other kings in India also fought for their own kingdoms and territories. They did not fight for the common nation. So, you have learnt about the major causes of the failure of 1857 revolt. Now, let's understand the effect and consequences of this revolt. What happened after the failure? The revolt produced far-reaching results. That is, the results which were seen were long-term. The British introduced some changes in their old policies also. The powers of East India Company was transferred to the British Crown in order to ensure a more responsible management of Indian affairs. So, after the 1857 revolt failed, the British Crown understood the reasons, and there were some governor generals who were very cruel, harsh, and they introduced harsh policies. Now, the British Crown well understood that if this continues, the British colony in India would go out of their hands, and so they wanted to keep it, and they introduced these changes. The Governor General of India was now replaced by the Viceroy, who was a personal representative of the Crown. Lord Canning became the first Viceroy of British India. Due to the change of policies by the British, the respect, dignity and honor of the native princes was acknowledged. The British now showed respect and dignity to the kings. The British government was compelled to change its policies towards India. The salary, allowances and facilities given to the Indian soldiers, sepoys was also increased. So, again this was something positive. Moreover, the British Crown replaced the Brahmin soldiers and other soldiers with the Sikh and Gurkha soldiers, as they found that they were more stronger and superior in fighting. The British realized the importance of tradition and religion in the lives of Indians. Therefore, they decided to give respect to Indian traditions, customs and religious beliefs. Thus, we find that a new phase of colonial rule began in India after 1857. Though the British were able to suppress the revolt, it clearly indicated the might, strength and determination of the Indians. It succeeded in sowing the seeds of Indian nationalism. It served as a source of inspiration for future generations. In true respect, it was the first war of Indian independence. So, here children, we come to the end of this lesson.